This episode was made possible by our incredible donors. Their faithful support allows us to continue the work of amplifying the voices of religious abuse survivors. We committed early on never to monetize any of the stories, so we rely solely on donations from people like you. If you value the work and are able to contribute, you can become a monthly donor at the link in our show notes. Another way to support Bodies Behind the Bus is by following, rating, and reviewing the podcast. It only takes a moment, but has a tremendous impact on our reach. Thank you for daring to listen. All right, welcome back, everyone. We have another Just Calling episode with Joash. We're excited to have Joash back. Reminder, if you have not purchased Joash's book yet, please go get it. It's called The Justice. I have the book. Hold on. I'm going to get it. Hold on.
You're going to restart this. There we go.
Got it. Got it right here. Got it right here.
Woo.
Still have
The
Nice.
Justice of Jesus. I have notes in it too, Joash. So Justice of Jesus. So please pick that up. It's out everywhere that you buy your books. So or online. So anyways.
In our show notes too. You can just click the link in the show notes and go buy it.
Awesome. Joash, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back here. And yeah, I'm honored you still have the book and you haven't thrown it out, that I haven't done anything to make you burn it. Really grateful.
Yes. Yeah, my book burning ceremony is not till later in the month. So anyway.
We reserved that for Halloween night.
Yeah, Halloween.
You had a good time, yeah.
Anyways, so we're going to continue today. And Josh, I wanted to spend some time talking about empire, specifically looking at empires historically, and also pivoting toward more of what, the American empire looks like historically and today. So I'd love to start, if you can, because I know you talk about empire in the book. Help us understand, give us a definition for empire.
Yeah. Empire is a big part of the book. And so much of my ideas around empire actually come from Global South liberation theology that help us understand power structures that we ignore in the Western church. Because quite frankly, we've been shaped by these power structures. We've been shaped by empire around us. I realize that even as I say empire, I'm probably exciting some Star Wars nerds here, and there is absolutely a connection because I think Star Wars is, especially Andor, is such a helpful framework to understand empires and how they work, even if they mask themselves in the world today and pretend to be the good guys, which is also a myth of empire. The Roman Empire said, hey, we're colonizing all these countries to spread Roman peace, Pax Romana, which was a myth of empire. I think the American empire today says similar things too. We're spreading democracy. Are you, or are you spreading destabilization around the world, right? And these are real questions. But I define empire in the book as any human system that hinders the flourishing of creation, especially our marginalized neighbors. So systems and power structures that do that. Now, empires aren't just white. They aren't just Western. They're global. They're all over the world. But something else that I also talk about throughout the book is how throughout church history, we see the church and the people of God living in faithful resistance to the empires of their day, right? And so you see the Jewish people in the Babylonian Empire trying to resist that faithfully. You see Jesus and Paul in the Roman Empire being killed by the empire ultimately. And then you also see in more recent history, you've seen the Third Reich Empire, Nazi Germany, the Southern Confederate Empire in the US South. And today, I think we see the American empire. Most of us don't think of America as an empire. And to be honest, I had to move away from America to start seeing America as an empire, to grapple with how Americans are actually perceived around the world for the harm that it also does. So one example of this is, and I've learned this after becoming a Canadian, is that when Americans and Canadians go to Latin America, it's a very different experience. So when Canadians go, you're welcomed. Initially, people suspect Canadians to be Americans because of the similar accents. So a lot of Canadians wear Canadian flags and that kind of thing. But there's a reason for that stigma. It's because the U.S. government and the CIA has, really messed up the political system there by playing favorites and trying to set up people in power who would support the American empire. So there's so much history into this, but all to say, empires are alive and well today, even if they tell us otherwise. And another empire that I think is important and relevant right now is the Israeli empire, the empire of Zionism and Christian Zionism, which is actually not supported by the vast majority of Jewish people. It's funny, I saw some data recently that said that evangelical Americans are more likely to support the Israeli empire than Jewish people, right, who see it for what it is. So all that to say, Jana and I have been having some interesting conversations lately. There's some interesting information that's been floating around. I don't know if everyone has had a chance to see it. Maybe this is your first time hearing this as breaking news, but there is something that the Israeli empire is up to in the American church. Why don't you tell us more, Jana?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that whenever we start to have these conversations, I just want to acknowledge that there's a chance that as you're listening to even just the idea of us talking about Israel, your chest is getting tight, you're getting anxious, you're having questions about how to engage that conversation in a way that's like honoring of all image bearers. And so just to start us out, every single one of us on this call is for image bearers. Yeah. Whether they are Israeli or Palestinian, American, Canadian, Latin American, we are for image bearers, full stop. And we right now are about to have a conversation about governments and empires. So I just want to start us there. There was some really interesting news that started breaking this week that Joash, Jay, and I have kind of been mulling over. How do we bring this conversation to Bodies Behind the Bus? We feel a duty to do that and to inform our listeners of what is happening and how American churches are being influenced or there's an attempt to influence American churches by a foreign government. So I'm going to be talking about something. It was a filing with our government, and it's called a FARA filing. So it's a Foreign Agents Registration Act. These are filings that have to happen if a foreign government, foreign agent is funding something in the US. So that is why it's been filed here. I'm going to drop the entire filing in our show notes. So you can go read it and see for yourself. All of what we talk about today is detailed in this filing by the people who filed it. And the people that are funding in this filing, the reason this filing had to happen is because it is the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I think to start us out, I'm just going to read this summary. I told Joash and Jay, I dropped it into ChatGPT, which cancel me, whatever. It was really helpful to get this summary of like, what is the overarching theme of this filing? And it told us the filing describes a large-scale, faith-based media and outreach campaign funded by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, managed through a California-based entity, with the goal of shaping U.S. Christian audiences' perception of Israel through emotional, digital, and physical engagement strategies. Joash and Jay, when you just hear that summary, what do you think?
Jay, you go first.
Well, I was going to add to it. I remember growing up and in the 90s, I'm not going to tell you how old I am. I'm 45. But I grew up in the 90s as a teenager. And when I became a Christian, I got like hooked on like watching TV at night. And this guy would pop on really late at night and talk about the end of the world. And I would watch it and I'd be like petrified of it. And I forgot what his name was, but he was an angry white guy. So that really narrows it down. But one of the things I remember is like I had a physical response because it talked about Israel all the time, like how we need to watch for signs in Israel, and we need to watch for people trying to make peace with Israel, or what's military actions with Israel, and like how we have to defend Israel, and like countries that defend Israel God protects, and countries that don't God turns from. And I had a physical body, like a body response when I would hear news about Israel. Like I would be afraid for me, for my country. And so I want to just like no, I want to like just say that like we all bring something, especially if we grew up in American Christianity, that we are predispositioned to have a response toward Israel, and that as I've gotten older and read more, that response that I was having was not a correct response. It was strictly out of fear. It wasn't out of factual things were happening. So I just want to recognize that if you're experiencing that it's okay to like have doubts. Like God's not going to strike you dead for saying something bad about Israel, or for having an opinion about Israel that is like thinking, hey, Vic, they're not in the right here. So I just want to say that because like I know what that feels like. When I hear you say that, and I read the whole thing, so when I hear you say that, Jonna, it just sounds like propaganda. Like it sounds like propaganda in the way that we hear churches today talk about certain things. It just sound, and it fits perfect into the narrative of American Christianity about playing to the fear of what I'm just talking about, playing to the fear of what we all have in our bodies based on how we've been presented the Gospels, and how we perceive Israel's place in the Gospels, and how we perceive America's place, which America's not in the Bible, but how we perceive ourselves in that battle, that spiritual battle. So it seems like propaganda, but from a spiritual perspective, if I put myself 15 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, it feels heavy, like a spiritual thing, like this is heavy, like this is something that I really need to pay attention to, and this is important, when in reality, it's propaganda. That's all it is.
Wow. Thanks for that, Jay. Yeah, I would say for me, I've had the privilege of working in the underbelly of American politics, right? And seeing things from the inside. I have a master's degree in this stuff. My thesis was literally running an advocacy campaign where you're influencing churches to take policy action, right? And so this is a well-run political campaign to me. This is a well-run political advocacy campaign. And they're thinking about everything. They're thinking about grassroots. They're thinking about messaging, but they're also thinking about digital, right? And I've also heard that there's this group called the Esther Project of basically, right-wing influencers who are being paid about $750 per social media post to be posting on things. And, groups like this exist on every side, but there's a concerted effort here by a foreign government, and this is public information, to influence the American church. And I think it's also very strategic because who is empowering the current administration right now? It's white evangelicals who really voted this administration in. So it's a very targeted advocacy campaign. Yeah, what are you thinking, Jonna?
Well, I think what both of you said was super helpful. And when you talk about targeted, I'd like to get into that a little bit, what this filing is actually telling us, its purposes and goal is, what they're planning to do. So if you look into the filing, you will actually see specific churches as well as their congregation size. Acts 29 people, Village Flower Mound is on that list in Texas. Multiple churches here in Arizona are. It's actually targeting 4 specific states to start, but there's randomly like a bunch of Texas churches also listed. Their main target demographic is California, Nevada, Arizona, and Colorado, which I thought was interesting. What their plan is, there's multiple prongs to this plan, but what Joash is speaking about when he talks about targeting, there's actually a plan to do a geofencing digital marketing campaign. And I want to explain. Geofencing is going to identify, so you go to church, you attend one of these mega churches. You go to that church, your device is identified anonymously. via GPS, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi data, and then you're served targeted ads on apps, browsers, your social media platforms, and you are continually retargeted after that. So just the fact that you attend a service there, you're being targeted with a foreign government's propaganda, and you were targeted because you walked into your church's doors. And regardless of where you land on the political spectrum, opinions of what is happening in our world today, I find that deeply, deeply concerning. And I think we should all find that concerning and be curious about why it would be Christians being targeted and why a foreign government would feel that that would be strategic and help them. The filing calls it the largest geofencing and targeted Christian digital campaign ever.
And do you remember when people got really mad because the U2 album appeared on their iPhones like 10, 15 years ago? Like that, like I can't believe, I don't want this. Like this is like completely different. And I think again, I would say this too, like these people they've raised money, so they're continuing to raise money, this group. It's the churches on this list doesn't mean that these churches are actually participating in this at all. But the fact that you could go to a place of worship and have some sort of type of foreign entity basically rob you of your privacy and then specifically target you because you're at that church is frightening. Like if you're a Western Christian, like just think about what would happen if it was what if it was another country? Like what if it was China or Iran? Like we'd be losing our minds. Losing our minds. And so I think that's where you look at it as like, why is this okay? Like, why are we not up in arms to be like, no, this is a bad deal. Like, this is not cool for anybody. So I just wanted to add those two things too. And I didn't mind getting the UTO album on my iPhone. I'm just going to say that it's not their best album, but I didn't mind it.
Will a church have to opt into this, or is this just like
No?
I mean, but wouldn't the group have to like petition to go to these churches? I mean, isn't that like one of the things that they're going to have to like set up shop and stuff like that? Yeah.
Well, the geofencing is not going to be necessarily attached to the 10.7 experience.
Okay.
So it can all just be digital. You may never know. So you
can you do geofencing without consent of like, can anybody do geofencing? Like if I had a random idea. Okay.
Yeah, you don't need, and I mean, this was in the news a few years ago, actually a few months ago, where a church in the States was geofencing other churches in the area, like a mega church in the States was geofencing smaller churches in the area with their church ads without their permission, obviously, and basically saying, hey, come check out this church. We offer better what. And you know, and they were called out on it and became big news because here's a church trying to steal flock from other churches by geofencing and leveraging this technology. So the technology is there. Exactly. It's been there for a while. And it doesn't need the consent of these church leaders.
It says there in the goals, it says comprehensive digital targets and heavy geofencing of all Christian churches. It emphasizes all in select markets. So maybe it's not isolated just to that list, but it's like everyone in that market, which is even crazier to think about.
What it reads like to me is this is like the trial. This is the test run, is these 4 states that are a prime audience for what they are wanting to achieve. I mean, it is so detailed. Please go read this filing, especially if you are in California, Arizona, Nevada, or Colorado. It says it gets down to, and this is just the geofencing. We have more to talk about. It gets down to like ads are going to be scheduled to trigger during worship times and large church events. They're going to continually retarget and continue with like deeper messaging, talk about tourism, talk about faith-based connections, which, I mean, the LLC in California is called Show Faith by Works that is doing this.
Wow.
And the goal, I mean, this is what just is wild to me. They set out their goals is to influence Christian audiences' perception of Israel, to encourage pilgrimage and tourism to Israel, and to reinforce Israel's positive image among influential U.S. churchgoers and leaders. As you dig into this filing, they have their messaging outlined. So you can see, I think it's under, I should pull it up, but I'm pretty sure they title it like pro-Israel messaging.
It's pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian state. So there's two messages that they're proposing. I have it right here. So.
And so they actually admit in this filing that that they're concerned about
it's combat low American evangelical Christian approval of the nation of Israel.
So people are waking up to the genocide happening currently in Palestine that has been happening, and it's causing people's empathy response to turn on. And people are saying, hey, I don't want weapons that my tax dollars have funded going to this. And the church is clearly influential here in the US. And so it benefits the Israeli government for them to turn our perception into something different and to get us thinking of them positively and thinking this is what is supposed to happen. Joash, what are you thinking over there as we're talking about all of this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of empathy and how that's become like a buzzword. And it's fascinating because if there's anything that our friends on the more conservative right-wing side have been telling us these last few weeks is to have more empathy for victims of political violence like Charlie Kirk. But what about victims of political violence in Gaza right now, right? Shouldn't we also extend empathy to them? And I think this is where the church needs to push against the empires of this earth to tell us, hey, have empathy only for this side or this side. But in reality, as the people of God, like you reminded us in the beginning, Jana, we're called to have empathy for everyone who bears the image of God. And if there's anyone on any empire side, any political side causing harm to people made in the image of God, which is everyone, then we as a church have a responsibility to shine a light on it, to speak out, and to call them to do better, because it's actually bad for them too. Injustice is bad for the humanity of these oppressors and those on their side too. And now they're trying to bring the American church on their side. Another thought that popped to mind for me was, what do these 4 states that they're targeting have in common, right? And these are essentially either swing states or states that are in danger of becoming swing states in this upcoming election cycle. And so this is very, very sophisticated, very strategic. They know what they're doing, and they're taking advantage of American Christians' goodwill and the ways in which we've been theologically conditioned over the years.
Yeah, it says on the activity, it says use biblical arguments to highlight the importance of Israel and the Jewish people to Christians. Educate Christians on the historical importance of Israel and its significance in the region. So when I read that, I think about like spiritual significance. Increase awareness of Palestinian ties to Hamas and support for terrorism within evangelical populations, and counter new and evolving pro-Palestinian messages as the global narrative shifts. And I think that's key too, because of the fact that you have more countries recognizing the genocide that's happening in Palestine and recognizing the Israel's not only guilt but will to just do it, despite what everybody's saying or other countries are saying, and that shift can be felt in America. And it's, again, I think like I want to just speak to like the fact that like it is okay to have another opinion on Israel as a Christian. We are not like the Israel that the Bible talks about is a completely different time and a completely different people group. It is not relevant to the Israel that is there today because it's different. It's just we are okay. We are okay to look at the Bible as a beautiful book, but question it, wrestle with it, maybe even doubt it, maybe even say, you know what? Some of this doesn't really apply to us anymore, and still look at the consequences through the lens, through the world, through the lens of Jesus, and make judgments and make opinions and thoughts based on how Jesus would treat people. And that's what the challenge has to be for us in the church, is through the lens of Jesus. How should we view this situation between Israel, between Palestine, and how should we view something like this that's coming into our country to influence us one way or the other?
They are not just utilizing geofencing in targeted ad campaigns. There's also an in-person live experience called the 10/7 experience that they've outlined their plan for that, which is a trailer with VR goggles that will depict the October 7th attacks, which one just sounds horrific, but also I think they mentioned in there that they'll have like interactions with IDF soldiers that will be talking to you. You're in virtual reality. You're taken into the moment. A government who benefits from turning on your empathy response is taking you into a horrific historical moment for the Israeli people and utilizing that to shift your perspective about an atrocity that is continuing to happen and has continued to happen since October 7th against the Palestinian people. The most level-headed people in the conversation on both sides have continually pushed for a two-state solution and said that is our only option going forward when it comes to Israel and Palestine. I am not going to pretend like my expertise in any way is speaking about geopolitics, especially in the Middle East, but the fact that they are outlining that they are against statehood for the Palestinian people here in writing I find that fascinating. They're wanting to take this experience to churches, Christian colleges, and they also outline festivals that they're going to take this to. The Air One Festival, the Harvest Festival. There was two other ones that I'm not thinking of. Like, it is so detailed and it is so targeted into the DNA of white Western evangelicalism. Like, it is going to be everywhere you are if you are participating in any way in this system. In these 4 states or at these festivals. It goes a step further, though. If you're not already concerned about a foreign government being that involved in the access to you through your church, they also have pastoral resources. They are making videos that they actually recommend are played during your announcements at your church service. They have a full section that talks about messaging during Christmas and talking about Israel. I just want to remind our listeners that one of my best friends, Layla, she came on a couple weeks after October 7th and talked about her perspective as the daughter of Palestinian immigrants and talked about her family's home, which she explained throughout history, the home would you build another room. So these homes are like decades and decades of their family's history that you build another room for the next part of the family to come on. They lost their home in Bethlehem. Like they can go see their home that was their family's home, that is no longer their family's home because of our empire dropping a people group into Israel and basically saying, get lost to the indigenous people of that area of the world. Bethlehem, as it was, you can trace her family back to that time period. They existed there. They lived there. Maybe her family members even engaged with Mary, Joseph, and Jesus in that time. And yet we are being targeted in our church pews during Christmas with propaganda, not the Bible, utilizing the Bible in order to get us to change our perception of an empire, not even our own empire, a foreign empire. And if that does not concern you, that we are allowing money and other governments to shape what we are hearing in our churches, I don't know what will concern you.
Yeah, that's so good, Jonna. And I appreciate you highlighting all these things. What's running in my mind right now is the very same Christians that are being targeted right now will also tell you that they care deeply about the persecuted church. Right? And so they're really acting against their own interests here by now supporting an empire that is actually persecuting the local church in Israel and Palestine. It's hurting the local church there. And if you don't believe us, listen to the voices of people like Munter Ishaq or Rafiq Khoury or the other Palestinian theologians and church leaders that I quote in my book, who are actively living in an apartheid state and are being discriminated against because of their religion and because of their Palestinian background. And this should deeply concern us. We can't say that we're for the persecuted church and then turn our backs and vote for policies and politicians and interests that persecute the local church in Palestine right now. And these Palestinian Christians have been Christian longer than my ancestors, who I talk about in the book. I often get asked, what's another Christian tradition that's as old as your St. Thomas Indian Christian tradition? And I say, well, the Palestinian church. But they're under the threat of extinction right now because of things like this, because of the empires of the West and this particular empire acting against them. And I'll just read this in my book, this paragraph in my book real quick. This is from the chapter in advocacy, where this is what I think it is to make theological sense of this right now. I say, Jesus called us to be the salt, light, and liberation of this earth with him. If we lose our saltiness by being co-opted by the empires of this earth and their unjust, oppressive ways, what good are we? Jesus himself said that if we lost our saltiness, our existence as the church, as Christ's body on earth, would be pointless, as we'd only be good for being trampled underfoot. And if Satan tempted Jesus in the wilderness, then the empires of this earth, as instruments of Satan, will also tempt Jesus's body, the church, and distract us from our task of being salt, light, and liberation while we await his return. And this salt, light, and liberation of Jesus, this good news of Jesus, is good news both for the children being killed, bombed to death, and starved in Palestine, and for victims of Hamas terrorism in Israel right now. It's good news to both of them, and we need to proclaim the good news to both of them. But what's happening right now is not just a threat to the church in Palestine, it's a threat to the saltiness of the church in the States.
And who benefits from all of this, right? Like, we don't ask ourselves that enough. Quite, do the people of Israel benefit from this? Do the people of Palestine? Who benefits? The powers that are pushing this are benefiting all of this, because I listened to this great conversation today between two people who have been on both sides of the peace process between Palestine and Israel, on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side, on prior failed attempts or temporary attempts that have faltered. And it was fascinating to listen to them talk, but both of them agreed with the fact that no one wins on either side. And we continue down the same road, and the same people are maintain the power and maintain the narrative. And it's fear. All this is fear. We are afraid to look our own theology and our own belief systems in the mirror and say, maybe I got it wrong. We're afraid to look at people that don't look like us and say, maybe they're right. Maybe I could be part of the problem here. Maybe I need to look at how I've treated these people and these people groups. We're afraid to do all of these things, and the people in power continue to maintain power and fear over us because they know it can control us, and they speak to things that they know we'll have an emotional response to. I don't care. I will say this. If you are a church and you are watching, what happened on October 7th was horrific. And if you look at that and you have empathy, then you have to look at what's happening in Palestine and the genocide that's happening in Palestine, and you have to apply the same empathy. You have to have the same emotional reaction. You cannot be a follower of Jesus and have one play two parts. You can't play but one side or the other. You've got to look at both and say, this is wrong and evil. For both parties, it's wrong and evil. And again, I just want to speak to, I know it's uncomfortable to say those things because I've been in that place to where I didn't want to say it. God is not going to kill you. God, empires come and go, and this empire in America will fall. One day it's going to fall, and it's not going to be because of God. It's going to be because of our own greed and our own infrastructure. It's how every empire falls, and there will be another one that rises up. And we are not called to serve empire. Jesus was a part of the greatest empire of the history of the world, and he didn't serve it.
Hmm.
He served the people. So why are we serving empire? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why? What are we benefiting from it? Because we don't benefit from it, and we're definitely not following Jesus if we serve empire.
So good, Jay. And if anything, Jesus was killed by empire.
Because of empire. Yeah.
He's like the enemy of the empire. And the church will be the enemy of the empires of the earth if we lean into our salt, light, and liberation. Something I want to say real quick to church leaders listening to this right now. If you're a church leader listening to this and processing the heaviness of all this, as a fellow church leader myself, I want to say to you, protect your flock. Protect your flock, because the empires of the earth are vying for your flock's attention right now, and they're vying to propagandize your flock. And this is where discipleship matters. This is why it matters for you to be exposing your people regularly to voices in the margins, like the Palestinian church. So this and this work of discipleship isn't going to be overnight. It's long obedience in the same direction. So be faithful, do what you need to do. Of course, you're going to take some hits, but there's hope, because at the same time, the Spirit is moving, and like Jay reminded us, the kingdoms come and go. But as we pray in the Lord's Prayer, God's kingdom will come. His will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
So good. And so how this came across Bodies Behind the Bus, Just Calling, is I was sent this by a friend who is a former pastor. And this person said, if I did not see this filing, there are peers of mine who are going to think free trip to Israel, because that is a part of this, is getting tourism to Israel. So they are smart. They are targeting you in a way that disarms you, that makes you think this is a great opportunity for your church, for your peers, for small groups, etc. You need to read this filing, and not just, especially if you are in one of the 4 states listed and Texas, but any U.S. church leader right now needs to read this filing. And if you are a listener that is going to a church, you need to read this filing, and you need to take it to your elders and ask them to read this filing. Because, like I said, regardless of where you stand on the current genocide that is happening, this is concerning. And it is being allowed, and it is being funded. So far, it's already been funded $325,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for what they're doing, that's a great start. And their proposed budget's, I think, 3.25. I'm trying to pull it up here. 3.25 million. 3.25 million is their proposed main budget for their spending breakdown for just these 4 states. So if this continues and they get the funding, we can be sure that at least aspects of this plan are going to be brought to fruition in our churches. And it already is happening to some extent. I have no doubts about that it's been happening for decades in our churches, but this is the first time that I've seen it laid out in this way and felt just how nefarious it is. I would be concerned if I saw something like this from our own government written out this way. Again, like, nothing would shock me now, but it's concerning that you can just read this thing. So now you have the information. What do you do with it? Joash, as we talk about, justice is not just for the heroic few. This isn't just, us here doing a Just Calling episode, informing our listeners of this foreign government who is geofencing our churches. Now you have the information, listener. What do you do? How do you step into being justice in this situation? This, I consider, an injustice, especially towards the Palestinian people. They are planning to use language like radical Islam. If you lived in the US during September 11th, what does that phrase bring up in you? Like, what does the church do? How do we step into this moment? What does that look like?
Yeah. I appreciate you raising that connection too, Jana, because I was in India when 9/11 happened, but I have family in the States who were targeted racially. And these are Christians. I have friends who were not even Muslim who were targeted racially. And the political climate in the States right now is one where the government is literally rounding up people for looking a certain way, right? Like we're already there. And all the government needs is the continued support of the American church to do these things. So instead of being enablers in all these injustices, let's push back and be the people that Jesus of Nazareth redeemed us to be. And it's I think things will likely get more challenging before they get more hopeful visibly. But I think it's important for us to keep hope at the same time and know that God calls us to faithfulness and not success. So we will take hits along the way. There will be a cost to raising awareness about this, but ultimately, there's a deep joy in being faithful that no empire of this earth can satisfy. That only comes from walking with Jesus in the light. And so I think the invitation for us right now is to be a people who care deeply about everyone made in the image of God, regardless of what side they fall on, and to be deeply suspicious of any governments trying to influence us, of any groups trying to influence us to care about one people group and demonize and vilify the other people group, because that is not the way of Jesus. The way of Jesus loves everyone who's made in the image of God and the inherent goodness in them.
So I asked, what are like the top 10 largest churches that are listed? We have Lakewood Church in Houston, Gateway Church, Southlake, Saddleback Church in California, Prestonwood Baptist, CCV, Christ Church of the Valley, here in my state, Peoria, Dream City Church in Phoenix, Flatirons Community Church in Colorado, Woodman Valley Chapel, Central Christian Church in Henderson, Nevada, and Calvary Chapel of Costa Mesa in Santa Ana. I've been to a conference there. There's also, the second tier, the Village Church, Flower Mound, Mariners Church in Irvine, the Potter's House in Dallas, Cornerstone Christian Fellowship in Chandler, Arizona, Calvary in Albuquerque. That's interesting. New Mexico's thrown in here and listed. North Phoenix Baptist Church, The Rock Church in San Diego. So these are just a few of the churches that they specifically name in the filing that they will be targeting. If you heard your church there, if you heard your friend's church there, a family member's church, you need to send them this and tell them they are going to be targeted and manipulated by a foreign government just because they stepped on their campus to worship on a Sunday morning. And that is unacceptable. There is no reason that our government should be allowing it, in my opinion, but especially our churches need to be aware and guarding their flocks.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, for Christian leaders, I know Joash said this, but I would just say too, like, now is the time for you to focus on Jesus. When you say Jesus is first, then this is where Jesus steps in. He's in the justice for all people, and he speaks against injustice. And despite whatever you feel like is more important in your life, your book, your conference, your padded numbers of whatever, your baptisms, none of that matters at the end of the day. What matters is what you stand for and how you live your life and how you treat other people. And right now is an opportunity for churches to lead, to really lead and be examples of what justice looks like for people, for all people, and how to fight and stand up against injustice. And you have an opportunity to guide and shepherd your people to be true difference makers in this world and in this time, if you choose to do so. And if you don't, then keep posting stupid stuff online about your sermons and about your not accepting Dove Awards and whatever the hell you want to on your Twitter and Instagram, because this is what Empire wants, for you not to get in the game and fight for the people, fight for Jesus, because they'll come for your Jesus when it's inconvenient. Trust me, they will come for your Jesus when it becomes inconvenient for them, and it will become inconvenient for them at one point.
That's so good, Jay. And I appreciate the invitation there. Something else I'd say is a lot of you are listening to this and feeling the heaviness of this with us now that you know this. And I often hear people say, well, I just feel so helpless. What can I do to serve my neighbors in Palestine right now who are being bombed and starved to death, right? Like what can I do? Well, here's one thing you can do. You can talk about this. You can spread awareness about this. You can literally share this podcast episode with someone and say, hey, listen to this and then let's talk about it, right? Do that right now. Resources like my book, The Justice of Jesus, study that in your church small groups. Like there are a lot of resources like this out there right now. But talk about this. Don't just keep it to yourself. It will cost you something to talk about it in public and with people you love dearly. But this is what it means to follow Jesus. And that's the invitation for us here today.
So good. I'm also going to link a podcast called Across the Divide in our show notes. I think that's an excellent place to start if you're trying to dig into more of the conversation surrounding Israel, Gaza, what's going on there, the people. It really does. They do a really good job of centering the image bearers in their conversations, which I really appreciate, the way that they have navigated a really hard few years. And I also want to, I have a little bit of a spicy take, Jay. When you said they will come for your Jesus, I would like to assert that they have come for our Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I meant and that's great. They already come for the real Jesus. I'm saying they're going to come for the American Jesus at some point because it will be inconvenient for them.
Yeah.
Because power and empire do not care. All they care about is power and empire.
Yeah.
So you can sit in your pews and think you're safe. You're not. Your Jesus, your American Jesus will be on the side of their enemy. When they say there's an enemy within, that will eventually be you. So this is how empire works.
No, and I would also say, as a church leader, like myself, this is literally our job. Our job is to show the church who was meant to be, so that the church could show humanity who humanity was meant to be, right? And this is our job as church leaders. We stand in the gap. This is what we signed up for. So it's not a question of whether or not we have the courage to do the right thing. It's a question of whether or not you're going to do your job as someone who represents Jesus.
I think something that I have continually heard over the past almost 5 years now of Bodies Behind the Bus, there is a sentiment among people I respect that are faith leaders that saying something too strongly, too prophetic, may turn off listening ears that would allow your voice in had you been gentler or held off or waited. And listen, I have space for nuance in that conversation. But in general, I am over that sentiment. By and large, I think we are at a moment in our country, in our churches, where the prophetic is so needed, and it can no longer be. I was just talking to one of our board members, Robert Callahan, about like when did his perspective shift theologically on complementarianism. We were jousting a little bit. And he said, somebody that he respected had to straight shoot him without being apologetic about it. Pastor, faith leader, elder, small group leader. You are someone that people inherently give respect to. And if you are uneducated about the human rights issues that are being perpetuated by our churches in the US here, you now have a duty to be educated about it and to have the stance that Jesus calls us to have. There is no more wiggle room. There is no more long game. You are called into this moment. Justice is not just for the heroic few or those woke liberal leftists on the outside. It is now. This is the moment. Step up And you will be surprised. It will be lonely. It will cost you something. It might cost you your job, but you get to walk away with your integrity and your head held high, and you will find community in the margins. We are out here. We are ready for you. Not all of us just want you to disappear and go into hiding on a mountain somewhere. We want you here. I would love for you to email us and go do it. We will help you. We will hold your hand. But it's now. There's no more excuses. There's no more long game. It's now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason why it's now is because our oppressed neighbors are literally dying right now over this. People are being killed right now. Like, picture that. Your silence when people are being killed, when you have the power to do something about it, is complicity. And that's not the way of Jesus, because Jesus threw his body on the line. Jesus threw his body in front of the bus for us, right? And that's what we're called to do as people who represent him too. And so, yeah, do it. Don't hold back.
Amen. And one other thing I hear from faith leaders in general is like, well, this isn't actually impacting my congregation. So it would feel like left field for me to just make a statement on a Sunday. You may be the one voice in your bubble that encourages people to get involved, to be the hands and feet of Jesus in this world right now. Maybe nobody has the courage because you did not have the courage, Pastor. Their leader is not discipling them and modeling what it looks like to be bold in their faith. It is your time. Go do it.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed